When we want it.
Now!
What we want.
Climate democracy!
When we want it.
Now!
What we want.
Climate democracy!
When we want it.
Now!
Get it!
Shut it down!
If we don't get it,
Shut it down!
if we don't get it,
Shut it down!
If we don't fight for climate justice, we're not fighting for freedom for women. The Amazon has been a threatened place, a dangerous place for land defenders and its own inhabitants, its own people, because we're being attacked from the outside.
Well, the country who caused climate crisis, they are polluters, we say they are can say loss and damage, sustain equity, they are loss and damage finance for the poorer nations, they are can say equity and a fair world for all, they are in the face of climate catastrophe, can't say you're the poorly one. If you say no better thing you do, they up now. They up now. Yeah, they up now. Don't tell me please to no save our world.
Some side events hosted by different groups, including youth organizations, emphasizing the need for the establishment of a loss and damage fund, one of the key demands of developing countries at the 27th Conference of Parties on Climate Change, COP27. At first, it seemed elusive, but was finally established at the end of negotiations. Civil society activists described the fund as a relief after decades of struggle, but called for its speedy implementation, as well as other earlier commitments by the developed nations.
So just to put in the conversation, we are here with a delegation of 19 people and we are divided in teams. I'm part of a team that is building up, is creating actions to create awareness and to catch the eye of reporters or leaders and other organizations about the demands of Brazilian youth related to climate justice.
So what are these demands of Brazilian youth in particular?
Yes, I think the most urgent one is for marginalized communities, especially those related to indigenous Black people, to be heard and to be invited for the conversations because they are the ones most impacted when we take into consideration their realities and how we can think of ways to repair all the damage that has been happening in their lives.
Each subsequent COP takes a new coloration that is further and further away from what is expected to deal with global warming. It's still a kind of jamboree, a kind of carbon trade fair, but I think it's also more and more like a carbon stock exchange because the polluters come to the COP with the intention of ensuring that their polluting activities do not stop, that the world keeps depending on them, and that the drivers of the crisis remain in place, and we like people just talking for nothing.
To them, however, other COP27 outcomes are extremely weak, as besides a welcome nod to a clean and just transition to renewable energy, there's nothing agreed in Sharm el-Sheikh that would actually deliver it. The final decision has also stripped out references to human rights, indigenous people's rights, and labor rights.
We've seen developed countries particularly delaying, distracting, not acting, a lot of inaction on their front, not putting up finance that's much needed, not even agreeing to a fund. We're not even talking about the amounts of money at this stage, it's the fund. But then on finance as well, we've not seen a great deal of progress in terms of, we haven't even met the very inadequate 100 billion a year of flows of finance that's meant to come from developed countries to developing countries. That was meant to be achieved by 2020. That's not even been met. So, we need particularly rich countries to really step up their action and to really take this very seriously and to not spend their time looking for what we term as false solutions. So carbon markets has not been talked about as much here, but carbon markets was agreed last year in Glasgow, and we can see that a lot of countries and a lot of companies are putting a lot of stock in establishing a carbon market that means that people buy credits rather than actually reducing emissions. And this is really bad news because we don't have time for these kinds of schemes. They're really bad for people, communities on the ground in terms of how the land gets grabbed, how the communities are treated. It's also really bad for the atmosphere because it means that big companies, big countries think, we'll just keep on emitting, we'll keep doing our fossil fuel thing because we'll buy some credits over here. So that's not been a very strong story at this COP, but actually it's a really important one, that the move towards these carbon markets is going to further undermine climate action.
We had the increase of deforestation in Brazil during these governments we have to live through. We have the increase also for climate, I don't know exactly the name in English, but a lot of people are being impacted for rain damage. Yes, a lot of floods, thank you. And these are things that can be avoided, that can be prevented. And we also have to think about how the global north is also responsible for the things that are happening back home.
Although the outcome of COP27 as captured in the final document from this COP has been greeted with a lot of mixed feelings and may not be said to have been satisfactory to all parties and groups, they have, however, agreed to work constructively with some of the outcomes of COP27 and begin implementation of some of the negotiations and agreements they have had in the past COPs. And from the COP27 presidency, the message is clear. This is a COP of implementation. It has kick-started the process of implementation rather than the long wait and long process of negotiations.